Alright, so good morning everyone. Thank you for making it out here today, and welcome to Planning Practicum Forum 2015. My name is Julius Frangos, and I'd like to thank my supervisor Christian for making his way out from Bow Desert today. So my presentation will be focusing on the ways of knowing, and I've been asking people about the relationship between theory and practice as like a very slow segue into my topic. So I'll be talking about the relationship between theory and practice and the sources of knowledge. So I'd like to give my address to country, so I pay my respects to traditional custodians of the land, the Coolabari people on which we meet today, and I extend this respect to Indigenous elders past, present and future. So my agenda for today, so firstly I'll do things a bit back to front. So I'll set the scene, my reflection on the importance of practicum as a whole and my development as a young professional, and the ways of knowing, and then I'll talk about my employers, and then I'll also guide you through my pre-practicum preparation. And then I'll talk about my practical knowledge at Scenic Rim Regional Council, my theoretical knowledge of the Urban Research Program, give you a summary of my findings, and then I'll provide you my contact information should you wish to ask me any more questions. Okay, so let me take you on a journey. So I want you all to imagine a circle, or just look at the one on the board, that contains all the planning knowledge known to mankind. Now, sources of knowledge are past and present practitioners, researchers, etc. Now we have to acknowledge that this boundary of the circle is in a constant state of flux. The irrationality of the system determines that this boundary is going to be constantly expanding and contracting. So this is you before you start your bachelor's degree in town planning. So the blue indicates your knowledge. So the sources of knowledge are theory and practice, and the knowledge originates from lived experiences and exposure to the planning world, maybe like family connections, something like that. On completion of your bachelor's degree without planning practicum experience. Now this is you over here. So you have a comprehensive founding in planning theory supplemented with specialisations in specific areas based on electives and personal interest. But you can see the disconnect between a theoretical knowledge and a practical knowledge. And then this is you on completion of your bachelor's degree with practicum experience. As you can see, there's a greater incorporation of practical knowledge and theoretical knowledge, with some things often crossing between the boundaries. I think it's important the first years are here today just to sort of see the importance of this. So additional knowledge builds on existing base knowledge, accentuates existing specialist knowledge, and creates new, previously unexplored knowledge pathways. So this is me pre-practicum preparation. I determined that, I don't know, sort of like a guiding quote through the practicum experience was, I know that I know nothing, which sort of seems like a counterintuitive thing, but it will make sense as I explain to you. So all wisdom begins with wondering, thus one must begin with admitting one's own ignorance. So I went into the workplace assuming that I knew nothing pretty much. And I wanted to be like a sponge, like SpongeBob, and sort of gain as much knowledge as possible without sort of implying my own assumptions on top of it. So my employers, I was lucky enough to have two employers, both in the practical and theoretical side of thing. So I had Scenic Rim Regional Council, located at Bow Desert, and my theoretical knowledge was supplemented by the Urban Research Program situated here at Griffith University. So I want to take you through like a brief sort of, I'm a very detail-oriented person, so practical knowledge, so this is Scenic Rim Region, has its council offices located in Bow Desert, has a very large land area with a very small population, sparsely sort of populated, have a rapid population growth as throughout southeast Queensland, we expand the population to 100,000 people by 2031. It's an ageing population, and due to amalgamations, there's 4 town planning schemes that apply over the entire council boundary. So these are the landscape and community attributes. This is like a case study of the area. So there's a massive landscape amenity as seen in that photo. There's Tambourine Mountain, there's rural characters, fertile agricultural land, and there's both social and tight-knit communities present within. So this is my role in Scenic Rim Regional Council. So I worked as a DA and compliance officer, and I was tasked with reading the current planning schemes for the council, reading past, present, and sort of almost future DAs, and verifying information, acting as a sounding board for other officers to bounce questions off. As sort of like the young, I don't know, fresh out of uni person in the office, it was always interesting for existing members to sort of ask me questions about what the current sort of things were in sort of the theoretical side of things. I attended pre-lodgement meetings, and I also did a fieldwork sort of activity and compliance assessment. So these are photos that I took sort of out there. As you can see, like a massive landscape amenity of the region. But today's presentation will focus on sort of the 3 main challenges for development assessment I found as a young professional. So these were balancing the growth in housing demand and development against the rural living character of the area, and then catering for rapid industrial growth in the Brommelton State Development Area, and then ensuring development takes into account the natural features of land, particularly flooding and land slippage issues. So challenge 1, balancing growth in housing demand and development against the rural living character of the area. So the most intense and common form of development within the council is one-storey sort of sparse dwellings, houses and stuff like that. And sort of at uni we're sort of told as a theoretical sort of thing that one-storey dwellings are very unsustainable for the region. And I found that as sort of like a conflict, a personal conflict maybe, that I was sort of assessing these developments saying like, oh okay, like we'll be building like a one-storey housing dwelling, and then on the other side of things like, oh, but why can't they make it 2 stories or 3 stories to sort of like concentrate the land uses and sort of intensify the use. So that was very challenging for me. However, I had to determine that from a practical viewpoint, it had to be accepted that more intense and possibly more sustainable uses were unsuitable to the land due to landscape and many considerations, community need and feasibility. And this is a case study of sort of that case in question. So this is a historic general store at Mount Alfred, and so it was built in 1887, and the use was to be turned into a microbrewery and ancillary sort of cafe restaurant by Scenic Room Breweries. Mount Alfred has a population of 150 people. It's located south of Boona, 3 k's east of Lake Mugra, and it's on a state-controlled road. So the outcomes, an MCU for light industrial use was not required as the intended use didn't exceed 45 metres GFA. Council are very supportive of this development as it is a novel use of an existing heritage site coupled with an economic/tourist opportunity. Challenge 2, catering for rapid industrial growth in Brommelton State Development Area. Now, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with poultry farms, but I had no idea what they were before sort of going out there. Brommelton State Development Area is obviously a state-controlled thing through the Coordinator General's office, and a high number of poultry farms as an intensive agricultural use as sort of like the primary land uses. Now, these farms hold up to 2.5 million birds per year, so they're quite sort of large-scale things. Poultry farms are highly productive and considered as a positive economic inclusion in the area. However, as SRRC operates as a referral agency, refusal advice would often be given if the development generates amenity impacts like noise and smell. The lack of buffer zones between poultry farms on the state development area border and residential land uses incurs a high likelihood of DA refusal. Alright, challenge 3, ensuring development takes into account the natural features of the land, particularly flooding and land slippage issues. So, as most of you should know, we had floods, massive floods in 2010 and 2011. So Scenic Room was a sort of a council area particularly hard hit by these flooding events. So the QRA, the Queensland Reconstruction Authority, generated regional sort of flood mapping overlays, and we had to apply these to developments to determine, which were often quite different to the council flood mapping overlays. So we had to apply these to developments, and say if it complied with like a council flood mapping overlay and it sort of didn't comply with a QRA flood mapping overlay, we had to apply conditions or possible refusal of DAs. And land slippage concerns were particularly prevalent, particularly on Tamborine Mountain where the soils are unstable. And this is just a case study of the flooding issues. So this is another site visit that I went on, which is combined MCU and RL. I think it was approximately 35 residential lots. And as you can see, the land area is quite flat and it's quite low lying. So we sort of advised that it'd be highly unlikely that approval would be given as the development application stood at the current time. So in summary, I gained a lot of practical knowledge and experience from a wide range of sources, not all of them planning. My theoretical knowledge or expectations was sometimes challenged by my experiences. However, I believe the quality, reality and validity of my theoretical knowledge was improved by this experience. I thoroughly enjoyed my time at Scenic Room Regional Council and the company of all the amazing people I got to work with. So it was just an amazing sort of group of people. Okay, my theoretical knowledge. So URP is located at Griffith University. It sort of operates within the school environment and sort of across multiple different sort of multidisciplinary sort of schools. And it seeks to lead Australia's efforts to improve and understand urbanisation and urban questions. It was established in 2004, as I said, it's multidisciplinary, composed primarily of Griffith University staff, and it has relationships with government and private industry. So I had 3 roles in this sort of organisation as a research assistant. So I had to survey members of the Coomera community with regards to urban greening strategies. I had to conduct a desktop study into planning researchers across Australia. And then my current sort of, I've actually been given paid sort of work in this organisation. My current sort of project at the moment is conducting research into enabling social innovation for local climate change adaptation. So role 1, survey members of the Coomera community with regards to urban greening strategies. So it was held in conjunction with Gold Coast City Council as part of their urban greening strategy for 2030. It was conducted up at Coomera at the neighbourhood day. And I'm going to hit more buttons on this thing to see what works. Okay, cool. On the 29th of March. And it also assisted one of my peers with her current research. So I was more than happy to help out. So it was a pilot survey. We had a sample size of 13 people. Indicated that approximately half the respondents were worried about climate change, whilst a majority believe that urban greening methods should be used as an adaptation measure. So the primary adaptation measure are urban greening strategies. Now, the pilot survey allowed issues in the original instrument to be resolved before further testing occurred, of course. The intercept survey method was used as was challenging, and issues such as information confidentiality and ethics, which I had no idea about before my practicum, were paramount to professional implementation, and it's still an ongoing study, so I can't really talk much more about it through the ethics. So my second role is conducting a desktop study into planning researchers in Australia. So once again, this is sort of a very ethical sort of dilemma. So I had to generate a list of planning academics who are researchers and teachers within all planning degrees nationwide. And then I had to rank institutes based on staff output, and it's still an ongoing study. So I did this with Jason. Okay, so my third role is conducting research into enabling social innovation for climate change adaptability. And as I said, this is my current study at the moment. So I've been offered a job, and the local level is where policies from all levels of governance are translated into practice. So often things such as United Nations conventions and international agreements have to be translated to the local level. So I'm sort of looking at the disconnect between theory and practice, policy, implementation, things like that. And these are my sort of 4 questions that I have to answer. So how is climate change adaptation framed? What institutional and cultural forces shape this framing and shape local communities? What factors determine policy decisions and on-ground implementation? And how are socially innovative methods created at the local level without governance intervention? So it's a very interesting sort of topic of study. Okay, so all knowledge gained in both workplaces cannot be completely defined as theoretical or practical in nature. There's so many sort of connections throughout. So a large part of practical knowledge is merely knowing when to apply theoretical knowledge. So it's situational and contextual. And it's what was mentioned before. It's sort of talking to people and understanding people's viewpoints more than applying my own sort of like knowledge to situations. I acknowledge that there's always going to be a disconnect between theory and practice. There always has to be. However, this disconnect can be minimised by constantly updating one's own knowledge and objectively viewing all situations. And the sources of knowledge, as I touched on before, I learned a lot of things, maybe not through the development assessment officers, but sort of talking to people in the local community and within other departments throughout council and sort of getting their take on what their idea of planning was. So that was very, very informative to me. And I'd like to thank Christian for coming today. I have a certificate as well to give him. That's just like a token of my thanks, so thanks for that. Cheers. And Jason as well, who's in Japan on a convention trip. He seems like he's always away, so he couldn't make it today. So I'd like to thank him, and I couldn't have done it without your patience and guidance. This is my contact information should you wish to give me any more questions, and my future credits. Cool. Thank you, everyone.